Good evening, y'all. I hope y'all have had a great Sunday. I'll tell you what, it's been a nice Sunday for me. Pretty relaxing. Just go to church and get some good teaching. It's always nourishing. And let me tell you, I've been using that word recently, nourishing, a lot recently. It's been neat. Uh, that's one thing that the Lord's been doing in my life is nourishing me in such a cool way. Yeah, I gotta say, yesterday I went to a men's conference with some men from the church, and let me tell you, it was it was nourishing. I was fed, which actually leads me to tonight's topic, feeding yourself. And it's so important to do so. But uh, I'll dive in and just say, hey, welcome. I'm Ricky of Ricky Speaks Life. And if you are new to viewing my videos, it's a nonprofit called Ricky Speaks Life, and I'm glad that y'all are joining tonight on this Sunday night. But yeah, so tonight I'm going to be talking about feeding yourself, and I'm talking about that in different aspects and what that could mean. So, I'll start out with this the question or a thought. Most of us, we start out the year with a New Year's resolution. We make all these plans that we're going to make all these changes, and we have all these aspirations for good change, good intentions, but we tend to fall off and we don't follow through with those intentions. And you're probably wondering, okay, so why in the world are you talking about this New Year's resolutions at the end of the year? Toward the end of the year. Well, I don't really always plan these things. It's just something the Lord, in preparation for my talk tonight. It was just something that popped into my mind today, actually. Um, and so, with that said, yeah, how often do we follow through with our resolutions, right? Um, but I'm going to ask you this. What is, if you can remember, do you remember what your New Year's resolution was? Can you think about what you probably what your resolution was at the beginning of 2022? Oh wow. Let's see. I couldn't really tell you what my specific New Year's resolution was, but I'm sure, and I'm gonna just assume that it's always to be healthier in so many different ways, right? We have these aspirations to be a better us. Yeah. Let me tell you, I've been doing the growth for a large portion of the year, and I really kicked off that growth. I would say at the end of January is when I really, I made my New Year's resolution in January, and um, since then the Lord's been really working in my heart, in my life. And so, if I could tell you just for a moment what my resolutions focused on were to better myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually and relationally, right? No, not in any particular order by any means, but I knew that I wanted to work in all of those areas. And relationships, whether it be with others or myself or the Lord, which goes into my spiritual health, right? My mental health, and what am I thinking, what am I saying to myself? Emotionally, how do I feel about myself? And physically, how am I taking care of myself, right? Those are questions that I asked myself toward the beginning of the year. And I tend to ask myself those questions on a weekly, if not weekly, it might be a daily basis. And I'm always challenging myself to grow in many ways. And I want to really encourage you to think about this. How are you feeding yourself? What are you saying to yourself? Because that's really going to impact how you approach life. Having OI, osteogenesis imperfecta, if I'm not saying kind things to myself or surrounding myself with kind people who will encourage, or, if I'm not taking care of myself physically, then I'm less inclined to be intentional with my relationships and my emotional well-being, any of my well-being. I'm not inclined to really focus on any of that. Physical is so important. It really is. And that's a big part of why Ricky Speaks Life exists. It's not the main part. It's the main mission. I will say this. A few years back, I fell out of my wheelchair and broke some bones, and the wheelchair fell over on me, and I knew the importance of having a manual wheelchair because, that's what gets me out of depression. When I'm depressed, is being able to physically move myself and do good things for myself. And I know that everything else falls into place. Everything else falls into that. My spiritual and my emotional, mental well-being, it comes together. Because that's the way that the Lord created us, is that everything is connected. As I meditate in God's Word, and I know I've made mention of a Bible reading plan that I've been doing for the past couple videos. I've been mentioning that. I gotta say, and I don't have it pulled up tonight, but Romans 12, 1 and 2, I'll paraphrase it, and it talks about renewing our minds, being transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that is focusing on the Word, on God's Word, and letting Him mold you and shape you, your thinking. This world is so oftentimes dictating how we feel and think about ourselves. But if we rely on the truth of what God says about us, man, we can excel in so many ways. Really, we can have the good day of not being depressed or anxious about your past or about your relationships, whatever you may be going through. Renewing our minds in God's Word helps us lean on Him in the midst of our hard times. And it's such an amazing thing to wake up each morning and feed on God's Word. You know, I may not have the best memory to remember all scriptures, but, you know, it does nourish me. I may not remember what I ate for breakfast 2 weeks ago, but I can tell you that I was nourished and I was fed by it. If I stopped eating food, I wouldn't be healthy, you know? And that's so similar to how meditating and reading the Bible is. Like, that's how important it is. If we stop doing that, then it does affect our spiritual health. And I know for myself, when I'm not in the right place physically, it does affect my spiritual, my mental, everything else. And so really, I would encourage you, if you are a believer, to really dive into God's Word daily, consistently. Because I don't know how anyone can walk around in this world without a sword in their hand. I just quoted Pastor John Piper. It's very crazy to think that anyone could walk around in this world without reading God's Word. And if you're not a believer, if you're not a Christian, I would encourage you to dig deep inside. You know, all it takes to have a relationship with God is to believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sin. He was buried and raised. And after 3 days, he was raised in accordance to the scriptures. And he did that for sin, because you are a sinner, and as well as I rely on the Lord for my sin nature. And so the challenge tonight is, I want to ask you, how are you feeding yourself? What are you feeding yourself daily? What are you saying to yourself? What are you thinking? How do you feel about yourself? And I want to encourage you to look to the Lord and feed on Him. So with tonight's word, I want to thank you for tuning in, joining. I love it when I'm able to hear of how Ricky speaks life, how these stories, these messages impact you. It's a blessing. And so with that said, I would like to remind you of Ricky Speaks Life mission. Ricky Speaks Life's mission is that lives will be impacted by hearing of God's goodness through Christ on the cross, and by providing manual wheelchairs to those who can't afford them. So, would you please pray and consider supporting Ricky Speaks Life financially, so that the gospel, the good news, can be shared through the telling of my story and His works in my life. And not only that, too, that it would help someone who needs a wheelchair as well. So, thank you. If you've been touched by this video, this message, would you please share it and like it, give it a like button, and I hope y'all have a good night. Bye.